If you're coaching, you're running ads to get coaching clients, today I'm going to try, if I do my job correctly, to make you very uncomfortable, because by the end of this video, within the next 20 minutes, hopefully I get you to go to your ads manager and turn them off. But at the least, at minimum, I want you to dramatically rethink your entire client acquisition strategy. And if I can get you to rethink how you acquire clients, then today was a win. Now, in short, I'm going to show you 3 things today. Number 1 is why ads are slowly draining the life out of your coaching business. Number 2 are the 3 biggest consequences that most coaches don't even realize are happening due to ad-centric modeling. And number 3 is the exact methodology that what I call category leaders use in the coaching space instead. Let's dive in. They say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. That's Mark Twain. And right now, I'm watching the exact same pattern that destroyed thousands of agencies 5 years ago do the exact same thing to coaches in real time today. What I mean is that back in 2020-21, there was a massive shift in the agency world. Agency owners got tired of outbound prospecting, the cold emails, the LinkedIn outreach, the rejection, so they decided to take what seemed like an easy route, Facebook ads, and it looked brilliant. Some agencies, myself included, saw incredible growth, costs were cheap, cash was flowing, it felt like you had discovered a cheat code. What I always used to tell people, I didn't do cold email or LinkedIn outreach, I did Facebook and Instagram outreach. It's just that cold email and LinkedIn is more popular right now. And I've always thought of cold outreach as chicken and rice. If you've ever tried to lose weight, put on muscle, whatever, be it the boring diet of chicken and rice and some kind of green veggie, that's how I've always looked at outbound prospecting. The boring work that needs to be done. But ads, they're like steroids and they feel like a cheat code. Everyone goes through this process at some point in their entrepreneurial journey. They find ads crush them. What you have to really understand at the core is that the online space, our space, moves incredibly fast. And what took traditional businesses decades to learn, we in the online world have compressed into a few years because of how quickly the space moves. And the lesson that's really come to fruition in the last 5 years is that ad-dependent businesses are fundamentally fragile. Now, here's where it gets interesting and also concerning. For years, coaches stayed smart. They watched the agency bloodbath, they kept their distance from the ads game. Most coaches built organically, maybe running some retargeting ads, but they understood something crucial that agency owners had forgotten, which is that when you run an expert-based business, asking Facebook to convince people you're an expert, it's like asking a used car salesperson to convince people that you are trustworthy. The medium undermines the message. And the coaches who did run ads successfully, like Sam Ovens with consulting.com, had terrible margins with large operations. Sam did, to my understanding, over $30 million a year, and he profited $1 million of it. The consulting.com example is probably top of mind because Iman finally posted that he bought it and all the IP that goes with it. But I want to go down an important tangent on this, and that is that a coaching business makes no sense to run unless your number 1 goal is maximum profitability, with the exception, of course, of passion projects. If you're willing to do it for free, then you don't need to worry about profitability. But in general, information products are the best business model on the planet for profit. I want you to think about that for a second. In info, you have 0 exit value. And there's a few reasons for it. Number 1, you're probably hearing people, I'm not going to name names or give an image of who I would be talking about because I've never met certain people in the space and I don't want to speak ill of anyone in the space. But if anyone ever says they've sold an info company, I can assure you that's not really the case. It's almost always very well framed half-truths where they get stock options in their companies that mean nothing and that are worth nothing, and they get a couple tens of thousands of dollars paid up front, or maybe they get 100 or 200 grand of cash up front for their company. When in reality, if you create a profitable company, you would never take a deal like that in the first place. And the reason you have no value in an info product is because most of the time it's tied to your face and your brand. And if it's not tied to your face or your brand, there's nothing really that keeps an investor who could invest millions of dollars from just doing it on their own and starting the same exact company, just doing it more effectively and putting more money into it. There's no recurring revenue in info. I kind of say that with the half-truth. My model example given for my incubator has a recurring backend. Our churn for that is incredibly low. It's less than 4% with an info. Recurring is unheard of, but the reason for it is because we over-deliver. The recurring model is not the main economic model, meaning we still have a high-ticket membership to join D7 in the first place. But for most of you guys out there, recurring is just not going to make sense for info. If you've ever tried, you would understand that. The last reason you don't have any kind of enterprise value is that you don't own anything in this company that's really independent of you, meaning there's nothing in the company that's going to tend to work without you being a part of it. This means that you should be focused above all else on profitability. But here's what's happening right now. If I had to take a guess, you're probably making the same exact mistake that agencies made 5 years ago. You're choosing the path that looks easy, i.e. ads, over the proven path of authority building. And history is repeating itself, it's just a different industry. Now, before I break down the 3 ways ads are destroying coaching businesses, let me ask you something. The top 3 coaches in your industry right now, the ones everyone knows, the ones who dominate market share and command premium prices in your industry, do you know them because of their book a call ads on Facebook? Do you know them because of the follower ads that they're running on Instagram? Do you know them because they're running webinar ads with a countdown timer? No, you don't. Look at any industry, business coaching, content coaching, relationship coaching, health coaching, whatever be it. The category leaders are almost always using what I call long-form expert-based content. And there are exceptions, like Shelby Sapp, who's running it with short-form content right now to her webinars. But she's also in an industry, not to take anything away from her, but she's also in an industry that's heavily untapped compared to the same industry with men. So if you are a male coach in a standard industry running some kind of coaching offer that dozens of others are coaching in, you need long-form expert-based content to break through. Category leaders found this out years ago. Iman, Hermosi, go back further, Ty Lopez, Gary Vee. While everyone's fighting over the same pool of ad-trained prospects, they were building audiences and have been building audiences of people who see them as the definitive expert in their industry. So why are you doing something different than the people getting the results that you want? Let me show you what happens when you do it your way instead of doing it as a category leader. Number 1 is that when you run ads to cold audiences, people who have never seen you before, you're forced to speed up the trust building process, and it's unnatural. Think about what normally happens in any kind of healthy coaching relationship. Someone discovers you through a friend or through your content. They start looking into you. They start consuming your content. They look at your material for weeks or for months. They start to understand your methodology. They start to build trust in the expertise that you have. And then finally, they decide to have a conversation with you. I had a client the other day telling me it took 45 days of him looking at my stuff on YouTube before he wanted to reach out in the first place. That's the healthy way of doing it that leads to proper relationships and coaching. But with ads, you skip all of that, and you have to get them straight to a sales call. Otherwise, they don't show up and they burn away. And because you have to skip all of that, the only way to make the ads work are by creating offers that remove every single ounce of risk from the client and putting it all on you. Massive guarantees, results, or refund promises, 30 clients in 30 days, or we're going to pay you X back type of offers. And you have to do it to make it work. Otherwise, you're wasting your ad spend because you've established virtually zero trust with the person that you're trying to sell to. The only way to get them interested is to give them an offer that removes all of their risk. But here's what this creates. It creates clients who don't trust your process and buy into easy outcomes. I gotta get better at speaking and writing and drawing and reading all at the same time while looking at the camera. This is a new skill for me. I appreciate you guys being patient. I've audited dozens of coaching businesses in the last 30 days, and the pattern was the exact same. Clients who come from ads had fundamentally different expectations than clients who came from organic discovery. They questioned everything. They resisted methodology. They demand constant handholding, and they bailed the moment that things got difficult. They were the ones who disappeared on Slack. They were the ones who, as soon as resistance came, you never heard from them, and then you would either get a refund request, a dispute, or you wouldn't get the second payment. Whatever the case was, they didn't buy into your expertise, they didn't buy into the process, they bought into a guarantee. This is what I call 20s. Clients who contribute 20% of your overall revenue but consume 80% of your mental bandwidth. Compare that to clients who found you organically, consumed your content for months, and came to you because they believed in your specific approach. These are 80s. These 80s implement everything you give them. They get better results, they refer friends, and they become raving fans. Ads, at their core, systematically filter for 20s and almost always repel 80s. Even if your ads are working on paper, they're slowly killing your business's margin. I've seen coaching businesses spend up to 35%, a third of their revenue on ads, but it gets worse. It doesn't stop at the third of your revenue being on ads. The ad-generated leads have lower trust levels, so everything else in the business becomes less efficient. Your show rates are going to be lower. On average, 55%. If you're good, maybe 60, 65. If you're bad, 45. Your close rates are going to be low as well because you're trying to build trust and close on the same call. Your client retention is going to be worse because you're hard closing people that didn't buy into your methodology but bought into an outcome, and when they don't get it, they're not going to stay around, and you need more staff to handle all of this increased volume and handholding. You need CSMs to try to reduce buyer's remorse because you're hard closing these people, and you're trying to reduce churn because people are leaving. You're putting band-aids and duct tape on broken parts. Let me give you more real numbers. Some of the businesses I've audited are spending $300 per booked call. If you have a 50% show rate and a 20% close rate, you're spending $3,000 to acquire a client. Even with a $5,000 program, your margins are demolished. For those numbers to work at a $3,000 CAC, you'd have to be selling, to make your business economically sensible, a $30,000 program. And that's assuming that the $30,000 program doesn't change your CAC, assuming that you keep the same close rate at $30,000 as you are $5,000. These numbers don't make sense. When I ran ads for my agency, I remember vividly, I was booking calls for $17. Now, I had a 50% show rate. They were terrible shows, but I was spending $30 to get someone live on call, and I was closing around 30% of the time that we got someone live on call. I can't even fathom spending this much money on calls. I remember My ad cost did grow in 2020 to like $65 per booked call, and at that point I debated slowing down and changing the process. And side note, that was for an offer where my average LTV was $5,000. Just like this. 5 years ago, I was spending a fraction of the CAC to get the same LTV with more profitability than a coaching business, and an agency should never have the same profitability as a coaching business. Coaching businesses should be wildly more profitable than an agency. Meanwhile, compare this to coaches or category leaders who are using long-form expert-based content to get calls for free with 80% share rates, 40+% close rates, because people are coming to them pre-sold based on the expertise that was shared in the long-form expert-based content. The math doesn't even come close to comparable. And as if these first two problems weren't enough, and I could keep going and going and going as to why you should never run an ad-centric model for business, but the one that I actually care about most is, I saved the best for last year, the negative flywheel. This is the problem that most people don't see short term, but is catastrophic long term. This is actually something that started to affect me back in 2020 and 2021. When ads start working even marginally, coaches become addicted to them. They start loosening up on everything else that previously generated clients. I want you to think about how I said outbound prospecting was like chicken and rice. When I found out about steroids, when I started running ads, my outbound prospecting died. My sales reps didn't want to talk to prospects anymore that came from Instagram or Facebook outbound. They wanted to talk to prospects who came in from ads because there's a little less work to close. And before I knew it, we stopped running outbound, which is incredibly common. The thing that got you to the point where you were liquid enough to run ads, once you start running ads, you stop doing the thing that got you there. I've seen this pattern over and over again. A coach builds organic following for years. An agency does outbound prospecting, decides to scale with ads. They see initial success and they gradually stop doing whatever it was that scaled their business, that built their business in the first place. They stop consistent content creation. There's no more outbound prospecting. There's no more relationship building. There's no more thought leadership. Everything gets funneled into optimizing ad performance. And then you start to trick yourself and say, I need to get my show rate up from 55% to 65%. All the numbers will make sense. But in reality, that's just what happens with ads. But that's not even the devastating part. The devastating part is what I call the negative flywheel that comes with ads. Think about it, with long-form expert-based content, every piece of content compounds. Right now, this video is on a brand new channel. It's getting no viewership. But just like with my other channel that has 20-something thousand subscribers, when I consistently post on this channel for weeks and then months and then quarters and then a year and then years, my trust will build over time. My viewership will grow. The authority on this channel will naturally increase, and videos perform better than the ones beforehand because the audience will naturally become more engaged and become larger. It's a positive feedback loop that gets stronger and stronger over time, but direct response ads are the exact opposite. The kind of ads that you run do the exact opposite of positive compounding. Ad costs will rise over time. Competition increases your cost per click. iOS updates destroy your targeting. Platform changes, like Google's new privacy settings on GCal, kill performance. You hit diminishing returns with scale, and before you know it, you're running ads at margins that make absolutely no sense just to feed a sales team that's gotten used to a certain volume of leads. I've been there. It's the catch-22. It is the golden handcuffs of growing a team because ads are profitable, and then before you know it, the margins are so thin. You love your sales team. You don't want to let people go. You're trapped into this business that's making no money because of ads. It just gets worse and worse, and eventually everything comes crumbling down. Coaching businesses, compared to any other kind of model, you don't tend to see normal businesses get to $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 a month and then just die. And it's because to make sure you're running an economic model, you're trying to always run at least a 10-to-1 CAC to LTV. Meaning if your ticket is $5,000, you can spend $500 to get a customer at worst. A lot of you guys have $2,000 or $3,000 tickets and you're spending way more than $200 or $300 to acquire customers. The reason that it doesn't make sense in that model of coaching is that for a majority of you, you have one-off offers. You sell someone into a program one time, you never benefit again because upsells and cross-sells and retention is terrible with ad-centric clients. I'll just say that your front end is less than 10-to-1 and your back end is non-existent. Your model doesn't make sense economically. Versus a chiropractic center will run a care plan, which is a high ticket upfront that pays for the CAC and more. And after that care plan is done, they will then retain that customer once a month, once every 2 weeks, whatever it is. I should say patient, not customer, and continue making money on that person for many, many years to come. Their LTV to CAC ratio is much larger than 10-to-1. Granted, they have more overhead and such. All to say that you're caught in a negative flywheel where everything gets more expensive and less effective over time. And when that inevitable crash happens, and it always happens, you have nothing to fall back on. You've atrophied all the organic systems that actually built your business in the first place. Even worse, you've trained yourself to think like a media buyer instead of like an expert. You start optimizing for metrics like show rates and CTR on your ads and such, when in reality, you're trading long-term authority for short-term cash flow. Every dollar you spend on ads is a dollar you're not investing in becoming the definitive expert in your space, leading your category. Every hour you spend optimizing funnels is an hour you're not spending creating content that builds actual authority, expertise in your industry. And here's the kicker. The coaches who are building real lasting businesses aren't even thinking about ads. They're focused on becoming so good at what they do and so well known for their specific methodology that clients seek them out. They're playing a completely different game, which leads to the obvious question, what do category leaders do instead? And it's that they create long-form expert-based content in what I call the empty funnel. Instead of interrupting people who are not actively looking for a solution, category leaders create content that people actively seek out when they're researching a problem. Instead of trying to build trust on a 30-minute sales call, category leaders build trust over weeks and months of delivery. Instead of competing on guarantees and promises, category leaders compete on expertise and methodology. That's actually an improper statement in its own because they don't compete for the expertise because they lead their category. Here's how it works. Traditional funnels follow this path. They interrupt attention, they capture and try to convert on a sales call. But the anti-funnel follows this path. We attract attention, we educate said attention, we demonstrate our expertise, and then we invite them to join our program. Attracting means you create long-form content that speaks directly to your ideal client-specific problems, not generic content. It's not generic content, it's hyper-specific to what your ICP would find valuable. You then use that content to shift beliefs and introduce new frameworks. There's a rule in sales. If you ever decide that you want to do this the hard way and you don't want to have an anti-funnel, you don't want to have a marketing-driven business, but instead a sales-driven business, there's something called a problem transfer, which means on a sales call, you try to find out what the prospect thinks their problem is, and then you change that problem, or you tell them what their problem actually is. And the reason closers can never really do this effectively is because closers never really understand the industries they're operating in well enough to tell people what their problems are. They're instead focused on all these scripts and frameworks and objection. And I can't really speak about this without being hypocritical because I have one of the largest sales training programs probably in the world at this point with the Iman's course. All to say that transferring the problem on a sales call is an incredibly powerful way to get trust, shift belief, and get people to buy your program. But it's so hard to do. And it's much easier to do when people are researching their problem via content on research platforms where you can shift and introduce new frameworks without the resistance, where you can position yourself as an expert who sees the problem differently than they do from the very get-go before they ever try to book a call with you. You then demonstrate your methodology in action through case studies, BTS content, your own business results, your own physique results, whatever it is that you sell. You prove your expertise instead of promising outcomes, and then you invite, meaning by the time that someone wants to work with you, they already know your price, they already know your methodology, and they trust your expertise. The sale becomes a natural step. Example of this is that for D7, prospects already know the price before they ever take a call with us. And if you want to know what it looks like to work with us and what our price is, I'll get to this in a second on this doc, but you can just message me 7@pauldaly.business, and I'll send you a doc that has everything about what it looks like to work with us after you've watched this probably 20-something minute long video. And I'm assuming that this is not the first video you've watched from me. I'm assuming by the time you want that doc, you've probably watched many more hours of content from me. And that's because this video is part of my entire anti-funnel. Long-form expert-based content has several massive advantages over ads. Number one is that it has compounding growth, meaning every piece of content you create continues to work for you indefinitely as it builds off previous content. Your audience grows exponentially over time. I still have videos from 6-8 months ago on my main channel that have people DMing us today. Long-form expert-based content also creates higher intent traffic because people are finding you when they're actively researching, not when they're scrolling. It helps build authority because it positions you as an expert. Ads position you as someone who needs to pay for attention. Better economics because you're not paying for calls. Your cost per lead is essentially zero, minus editing costs, and then of course time. And then platform independence is that you own the relationship with your audience. And then platform independence, meaning that when you run an organic driven company, it's incredibly hard to get thrown off YouTube or LinkedIn, for example, a research-centric platform, as long as you're not being a moron, for lack of a better term. It's not like you have to worry about your ads manager getting shut down, which will happen if it hasn't happened already. If you have a YouTube account shut down, someone is wildly after you and they have means to do it, which is incredibly rare. Now, to make sure you have an actionable or solution to take from this video, let's go over the framework that I use with my D7 founders and exactly how you can actually implement this today, how you can create the right kind of content today and get your anti-funnel running. Number one is that you want to own a subcategory that you can create expert-based content in, meaning don't create content that competes with sharks in the ocean, create content that creates your own pond where you're the biggest fish. Develop your unique methodology, meaning what makes you different, what makes your approach different. This is oftentimes a packaging aspect. This is commonly known as your mechanism as well. There are different ways to do this. In the business world, you see people rebranding the term agency, which is a mechanism, into different types of growth consultants, growth operators, IPGAs, EGC, whatever it is, tons of different acronyms. It's always this unique angle that you are talking about that no one else talks about. In the fitness world, example given, part of this would be the type of diet that you play with, whether it's carnivore, keto, etc., the story that goes behind it, how you take a certain type of diet and pair it with a certain type of training to make your certain kind of methodology behind the training that you have. Tim Ferriss with 4-Hour Workweek did a very good job with this. Graham Gallagher did a very good job with this. And then you create your contrarian positioning, which essentially states what you're doing, viewer, is not working. You have to do it this way instead. If you think about this video, my subcategory is coaches. A lot of people are going to go for any kind of online business. A lot of people go for coaches, consultants, agencies, etc. I want to work with coaches and consultants, and a majority of people who follow me are going to be Christian. My unique methodology is the anti-funnel through category leadership. My contrarian positioning is that you need to stop running ads and you need to do it my way. I have plenty of social proof showing that the way that I'm talking about is the way that people make money. Side note, what I just did is show you how I'm doing what I'm telling you to do. Part of what we do inside of D7 is called Inside the Blueprint, which is telling all the coaches inside of my incubator how I am growing my business so that you guys can implement the exact same thing into your businesses, which is fun. Phase 2 is to map out your content, specifically 50 to 100 pieces of long-form expert-based content, which I know sounds like a lot, that establish your expertise. I recommend doing that every single day, meaning recording and posting a video every single day, condensing the timeline in which you get it out, and then develop your signature frameworks and models. Phase 3 is accelerate the timeline in which you build trust. That can come from email sequences. Example given, if you go to pauldaly.business, in my bio, there's a CTA that will show you a 7-day free training on how we help people become the premium choice in their market and realistically build very large coaching businesses with 3 people. And that is a 7-day email sequence that will go out to you. That's incredibly valuable. Each email is 1,500 to 2,000 characters. There's no CTA on it in 7 days. And it's just something that continues the education of what I talked about in these YouTube videos. That sequence builds the relationship that we have behind the scenes, and it'll show you case studies that demonstrate the results even further of what I talked about. The last part of all this is conversion optimization. It's the part that you probably focus on the most. It's the part I focus on the least. In short, streamline an application process. You can do consultation calls. You can do GDoc closes, text closes. Really depends on the industry that you're in here. Make sure that you have alignment between your premium positioning and pricing. What it looks like comparatively is a lot of you guys are booking calls for $300. And you might think, by the way, that you're running follower ads that are very cheap, and then from those you get DMs that come in and such. But I would say realistically, there's another site you could look at, which is not just cost per call, but cost per offer. Cost per call, you're normally going to have slightly higher intent people than DM ads or follower ads, and because of that, your cost per offer almost always equals out to something ridiculously expensive. You get 50% show rates, 20% close rates, high client churn, constant optimization is required. The platform, you're dependent on the platform, but in the long-form expert-based approach and the anti-funnel approach, you have $0 booked calls, 80% show rates, 40% close rates, your client retention is much higher, you're compounding growth over time, you're independent of the platform, meaning you don't have to worry about shutdowns. And I know what you're thinking at this point of the video is likely that this sounds great, but you need clients now and you can't wait 6 months to build an audience, and I get it. I'm not saying, even though it sounds like it, I'm not saying you shouldn't run ads, but what I am saying, like I mentioned earlier, is that ads are like steroids. And you have to use them, I don't condone steroids by the way, but you have to use them with extreme caution after everything else is dialed in. You will not see someone hopefully avoid the gym, have a bad diet, and then start using steroids. You tend to see people that are using steroids be the people who have good diets and go to the gym. In the same kind of way, if you're going to use ads, you should have everything else dialed in. The reality is that most coaches, and you might have tried this too, try to build long-form expert-based content like we talked about today, but they fail. Not because the strategy of it doesn't work, but because they approach it like they approach ads, looking for quick wins instead of building long-term authority, and they create content about their solution instead of their prospects' problems. They try to go viral instead of going deep. They try to optimize for vanity instead of trust. At the end of the day, you have to understand building category leadership through long-form expert-based content is a skill. It's probably the hardest skill in coaching to acquire, which is why so many people don't do it. It requires understanding of your market at a very deep level. Most don't ever get there. It requires developing frameworks and methodologies that are genuinely differentiated, which most don't know how to do. It requires knowing how to structure content that builds trust over time, and that's exactly all of that is what we do inside of Daily 7. We help coaches become category leaders through systematic trust architecture. We don't just teach you how to create content. We help you build authority-based businesses that attract high-caliber prospects without desperate guarantees. So you guys knew it was coming to CTA this. If you're generating 25K plus per month and you're tired of the ads hamster wheel, if you're tired of competing with guarantees, tired of attracting clients who question every single thing that you do, then maybe it's time to consider a different approach. Maybe it's time to stop renting attention and start building authority. Maybe it's time to stop being a commodity and start being a category leader. If this resonates with you, DM me the word 7 on Instagram at pauldaly.business and we'll send you a full breakdown on how it works. The math is simple. Would you rather spend $300 per call fighting for attention or get calls for free from people who already see that you're an expert? Would you rather optimize funnels or build authority? The category leaders made that choice years ago, and I hope you do too. As always, I love you guys much. I will see you tomorrow. Until next time, happy hunting.